Hey guys, Happy New Year. I hope everybody had a wonderful new year and they had so much fun. We are going to be starting off the new year with some soup. I've had so many leftovers since Thanksgiving. I just want something light. So I'm going to make a soup. Now I am making something a little bit in between a udon soup and a chicken noodle soup. I don't have a recipe for this, but I'll try to remember everything and put it up on my blog for you guys. So we're going to start off with making this soup with a vegetable base. I've added some olive oil to my pan here, or to my pot. I'm going to add some onion. I've got an onion here that I just got diced up. I've got some carrots and some celery. And to this I'm going to add a little bit of salt and pepper. More pepper than salt, because the chicken broth that we're going to add is a little salty. So I'm going to go a little light on the salt. And a little bit of salt. That should be good. And I'm going to cook these down until they're tender. It should take about 5 to 8 minutes. So I'm just going to go ahead and let these cook down. Alright, so these vegetables have been cooking down for about 6 or 7 minutes. And now I'm going to add in some garlic. I've got 2 cloves of garlic that I'm going to add in. Stir this around, let this cook for about 30 seconds. And now I've got some zucchini and squash that I had in the refrigerator that needed to be used up before they went bad. I'm just going to add them in here. And I'm going to let this cook down another 3 to 4 minutes just to soften up that squash and zucchini. And then we'll add in all of the other ingredients. Alright, this has been cooking for about 3 minutes or so. And I've got some broth base here. Let's see, let me zoom you out just a little bit. I've got this broth base here. We went to the Asian store yesterday. My daughter wanted some noodles from the Asian store. She loves the noodles from there. So I picked up some udon noodles and this broth base. But we're going to add some chicken broth to this later. So I'm just going to go ahead and add in this broth base in here. Give this a little mix. Oh, that smells good. Now we're going to add in that chicken broth, just so we have enough liquid in here to make a soup. I'm going to add a touch more salt, not much, because I don't know how salty this broth, soup broth base is. So I'm just going to add a tiny bit, a little bit of pepper, a little bit of thyme. I like the earthiness that the thyme adds to soups. Probably about a teaspoon, half a teaspoon, and a bay leaf. Just remember how many you put in there, because you don't want to bite down in one. Since these are pretty small, I'm going to add 2. If I can get one out. There we go. Alright, and I'm going to bring this up to a boil. I'm going to turn my heat on medium. Bring this up to a boil, reduce it down to low, and let this cook for about 10 to 12 minutes, and then we'll add in our pasta. Alright, so this soup has been cooking for about 10 minutes, and the vegetables are starting to get tender. So I'm going to go ahead and add in my udon noodles. You can add as much or as little as you want. I've got, I don't know, 3-4 servings. So I'm going to add these in there and kind of get these moving around so they don't stick to each other. And I'm going to let these cook for another 10 minutes or so, just until these noodles start to get tender. Then we'll add in some kale. You can also add in a little bit more broth if you need to, if it gets a little bit too thick. So I'm just going to go ahead and let these noodles cook down, and then we'll add in the kale. Alright, so this has been cooking for about 10 minutes or so, and the pasta is almost done. So I've just got some kale here. I keep this in my freezer, so that way I can use it whenever I want, and it doesn't go bad. So I'm just going to add that in there. Give it a little stir. And let this start to wilt down. Which is that it doesn't take long. If you keep it in the freezer, it kind of wilts down as it thaws, which is great. Cuts a lot of cooking time off. And this soup is looking and smelling delicious. I've got some chicken here. You can do rotisserie chicken, you can do boiled chicken, roasted chicken, whatever you want to do is fine. So I'm just going to add a little bit of that in here. This is just plain roasted chicken with a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. Give that a little stir. Kind of get that mixed in there. Quite a chunky soup, but it looks delicious. So now I've got probably half of a lemon in here. I'm going to add that in there, and it's just going to brighten up the soup and give it a little bit more zing in the broth. And I've also got some sesame oil here, and I'm going to add just a little bit, probably about a tablespoon. You certainly don't want to add too much because it will overpower everything. And now I'm just going to taste it, adjust the seasoning. If it needs more salt, I'm going to add more salt, pepper. And this is pretty much done, and you can top this however you want. I've got some parsley and some green onions and some soft boiled eggs sitting over to the side that I can top this with. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this off, check the seasoning, and get this plated up.
Alright, you guys, here is this delicious bowl of soup. I don't know what I'm going to call it yet. I'm going to try to remember everything that I put in it so I can put it up on the blog. But this is absolutely delicious. I just topped it with some parsley, some green onions, a soft boiled egg, and some sesame seeds. So I'm going to go enjoy dinner. Alright guys, so today I'm going to be making my Southern style chili. This is a chili that I've made for many years. It's delicious. It's got a few spices in it, but you can certainly swap these around to whatever spices that you like. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and get this started. Besides, chili just sounds good today. It's a super cold day outside today, so it sounds absolutely delicious. So I'm going to start out with adding a little bit of avocado oil to my pan, or to my pot here. And I'm going to add some ground beef. Alright, so I've got my ground beef in there, and it is starting to get brown. I'm going to go ahead and add in the onion. Now, if you are using a more fattier ground beef, I would cook the ground beef first and then drain it off and then cook the onions with the ground beef. But since mine is a lean ground beef, I'm going to go ahead and add the onions. So I've just got one onion here that I've just got diced. You can add however many that you want. I'm just going to do one today. Got that going in there. Now I'm going to let this cook until the onions get a little tender. And then I'm going to go ahead and get out all of my spices that we're going to add to this. And once these onions are tender, we'll add the spices. Alright, so these onions are nice and tender, and I've got all of my spices here. I haven't measured them out yet, so we're going to go over this each individually. So, I've got some paprika here. I'll take the lid off, and we're going to add about a teaspoon of paprika. Got 2 cloves of garlic that I'm adding in. It's just minced. But you can add more or less to taste. And I've got some garlic powder here. Add about 1 teaspoon of garlic powder and some onion powder going in. Some cumin, about a teaspoon. We're going to add about 2.5 to 3 tablespoons of chili powder. You can use any brand that you like. And I've got some red pepper flakes. Now the heat spices, like the really spicy spices, you can add each individually into your taste. So I'm just going to add about 1/4 teaspoon of red pepper flakes and about the same amount of cayenne pepper, but you can certainly add more or less. And then we're just going to add some salt and some pepper. And we're going to stir this around and let these spices start toasting up. It should take about 30 seconds until you start to smell them. And I can already smell these spices, so I'm going to go ahead and add in my tomato sauce. Now I'm using crushed tomatoes, but you can do tomato sauce, tomato puree, or tomato juice. And I've added about 1 cup of beef broth to my tomato can, just to get out the extra crushed tomatoes that are in there. And I've got a can of diced tomatoes, but you can use stewed tomatoes as well, or you can do a few cans of Rotel. Go ahead and give that a little stir, just to get all of these spices and tomatoes and tomato sauce all mixed together. Now I've got some tomato paste here. Now you can add as much or as little tomato paste as you want. It really depends on how deep you want the flavor. Sometimes I add 2 tablespoons. Sometimes I add the whole can. It just really depends on you. So I'm going to add about 2 to 3 tablespoons of tomato paste. I'm going to go ahead and get that all mixed in. Alright, now I've got a can of dark red kidney beans and light red kidney beans that I've just drained and rinsed. Now you can also use black beans as well. Whatever you have on hand will work just fine. And go ahead and give that a little stir. And now I'm going to add just a little bit of sugar. And this is just going to help tone down on that really pungent tomatoey flavor. You can add as much or as little as you want. I'm going to add probably about a tablespoon. And then just give this a mix. And I'm going to bring this up to a boil. Turn the heat down to low and just let this simmer until it gets as thick as I want. Sometimes I let it cook for 30 minutes. Sometimes I let it cook for 1 to 2 hours. It just really depends. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. In the meantime, I'm going to make some cornbread to go with this chili. And then I'll show you what everything looks like when it's done. All right, you guys, here is this delicious bowl of Southern style chili. It is absolutely delicious. I let this cook for about an hour, so it's nice and thick. Now I just topped it with some sour cream, some parsley. You can also do some cilantro. I got some cheddar cheese on there. You can do whatever kind of cheese that you like or have on hand. But this is so good, and I am ready to dig in. Alright guys, we are making some chicken and dumplings for dinner today. And I've got some chicken thighs and some water in my pan here. I've got about 4 or 5 chicken thighs in here. And I just filled it up with some water. Now all I'm going to do is going to let this cook for about 15 minutes. Then I'm going to drain out all of the liquid, fill the pan back up with water, about 6 cups. And then I'm just going to cook the chicken until it's completely cooked through. Usually takes about 30 to 35 minutes. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and work on the dumplings. All right, so we're going to start working on our dumplings. It's just a basic biscuit dough recipe. So I've got 2 cups of flour here, and to my flour I'm going to add just a little bit of salt, just to add a little bit of extra flavor to the dough. Probably about half of a teaspoon. And I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of baking powder. And I'm going to mix this together. Make sure it's all nice and combined. And then I'm going to add in about 3 tablespoons of Crisco. About yay much. And then I'm just going to mix this together until it forms like a crumbly type texture. So we've got that mixed in there. And as you can see, it's kind of crumbly. So now we're just going to add in some buttermilk. I've got some buttermilk. All you're going to need is about a cup of buttermilk. And I like to start stirring the flour when I add in the buttermilk. It just helps for even distribution. Now this doesn't have to stay cold like you would a biscuit dough, because it's going to be cut into little pieces. That way we can drop it into the soup later. So now that this is all mixed, I'm just going to let this sit and kind of hang out while the chicken finishes up.
Alright, so I have drained the chicken, put some extra water in there, and it has come up to a boil. Now we're going to boil this for about 30 minutes. But I'm also going to add in some onion, and this is just to help flavor the broth. Since we're not going to be draining this anymore, I want the broth to have a little bit more flavor. So I'm going to add some onion in there. We're going to add a little bit of salt. You can add as much or as little as you want. I would go a little bit on the lighter side because you can always add more salt later before you serve it. And I'm also going to add in some pepper. Give that a little stir. I am also going to add in some chicken bouillon, about 3 tablespoons. And this is why I tell you to go a little bit on the lighter side with the salt, depending on what kind of bouillon that you use. It's pretty salty. And I'm just going to give that a little stir. And we're going to let this cook for about 35 minutes. And then we will take the chicken out, shred the chicken, add some cream, the dumplings, let that cook, and it will be absolutely delicious. So I'm going to go ahead and let this cook. Alright, so I've removed the chicken, and I've got the chicken shredded over here on a cutting board. And now I'm just going to add in my cream and milk mixture. It's about 4 cups, equal portions of milk and cream. I'm just going to add that right in there and give that a little stir. Now I'm just going to bring this up to a simmer. It's going to take about 5 to 10 minutes. Once this comes up to a simmer, we'll add in the dumplings and let those cook for about 10 minutes. Alright, so this has come up to a soft simmer. And I'm just going to add in about 2 tablespoons of butter and get that going in there and let that melt down. Okay. And I've got my biscuit dough here. Now with this, you can roll this out. You can shape it however you want. I'm just going to pick off little pieces of dough and drop them down into the broth here, and they're going to cook up and be delicious. So I'm just going to add all of these down in there, probably about the size of a quarter. You can do it a little bit smaller, you can do it a little bit bigger depending on how big you want your dumplings. So I'm just going to add these in here, give it a stir, add a little bit more, and then let these cook for about 10 minutes until they are all cooked through. And then we will add in the shredded chicken. Alright, now that I've got them all in there, I'm just going to give this a little stir. Now you don't want this to come up to a boil because you'll separate your cream, and we don't want that. So we're just going to give this a little stir, being sure not to break up the dumplings that much because you want them to stay in their shape. And I'm just going to let this cook for about 10 minutes. Alright, so I've got a little bit of the cooking liquid here, and I've got just a little bit of cornstarch, and I'm just going to add that right in here, and this is just going to help thicken the soup. If you want it to be a little bit more thin, you don't have to add as much. I've got half a cup of the liquid and about 3 tablespoons of cornstarch. So we're just going to add that in there and let this thicken up. I've got my chicken here. I'm just going to add that right back in there. Give this a little stir, and we're just going to heat this chicken back through, check for seasoning, add more salt and pepper if we need it, and this will be good to go.
Alright you guys, here is this bowl of delicious chicken and dumplings. This is such an easy and filling meal to prepare for your family. It is so good, so easy, and it fills you up, and it's cheap. So this is what we have for dinner today. I just topped it with a little bit of parsley, but you can top it however you like. Alright, for dinner tonight, I'm going to be making one of my husband's favorite meals, and that is my lemon pepper cube steak sandwiches. They are so easy and absolutely delicious. You're going to love them. So to my skillet here, I'm just going to add a little bit of olive oil. You can use whatever kind of oil you have on hand. And I'm going to add in 1 onion and 2 bell peppers that I've thinly sliced. I'm going to add a little bit of salt and pepper, and I'm going to cook those up until they are as tender as you like. Typically, I cook them for about 15 minutes. While the onions and the bell pepper are cooking down, I'm going to go ahead and mix up my spices. I've got some lemon pepper, seasoning salt, and some red pepper flakes, but feel free to add any other kind of spices that you like. I typically add in a little bit of garlic and onion powder as well. Once the onions and the bell pepper are cooked down to however tender you want them to be, you're going to remove those from the pan and put them in a bowl, and you're going to set those aside, and then we're going to cook up the cube steak. Now for the cube steak. While the onions were cooking, I went ahead and mixed up the spice mixture that we mixed up earlier, as well as some Worcestershire sauce and some extra salt and pepper. Mix that around, and I just let that sit on the counter while the onions were cooking. And now you're just going to add a little bit of oil to your pan, and you're going to cook the cube steak in batches until they are completely cooked through. It should take about 2 to 3 minutes per side on the cube steak. You're just going to mix it around. Once they're cooked through, you're going to remove those to a bowl, and you're going to finish up cooking the rest of the cube steak. Once all of your cube steak is cooked completely through, you're going to add all of that back to the pan, as well as your onions and your peppers. You can season it again with some salt and pepper and whatever kind of seasonings that you like or prefer. And then you're just going to toss that around, and then this is good to go. You can put this on a sandwich, make a sandwich out of it, or you can eat it as is. My daughter does that. She doesn't eat a lot of bread, but she likes it just plain. But we put it on sandwiches, and you can top it with whatever kind of condiments that you like or prefer. Now I like to make like a little sauce gravy to go with it, just to add a little bit more flavor. So I just mix up a half of a cup of beef broth with some cornstarch, about a teaspoon, and then I just add that in there and let it cook until it gets nice and thick. And it kind of creates a delicious sauce. It's so good. Alright guys, here is my plate. I added some mayo and Dijon mustard to a hoagie bun and topped it with that cube steak and bell pepper onion mixture. It was so good. I served that with some fries and ketchup. You can serve this however you want. But yeah, this was absolutely delicious. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you are new. And I want to go ahead and apologize for the volume on this video. It gave me so much grief, but I tried to fix it as best as I could. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.